Good morning and welcome to the Committee on Zoning, and let the meeting please come to order. At this time, I'd like to welcome Council Committee Vice Chair Dos Santos Tam, Council Members Cordero, Kia Aina, and I believe Council Member Wire will be coming, and also Council Member Tupola. Although remote oral testimony is being permitted, this is a regular in-person meeting and not a remote meeting by interactive conference technology under Hawaii Revised Statute Section 92-3.7. Therefore, the meeting will continue notwithstanding loss of audiovisual communication with remote testifiers or loss of the public broadcast of the meeting. Members of the public will be allowed to provide oral testimony on all items on the agenda in two ways, one remotely and one in person in the council chambers. So basically, remotely and in person in the council chambers. Oral testimony will be allowed when each agenda item is taken up in the following order. First is the remote testimony, and secondly, the in-person testimony in the council chamber. Before testifying, each person shall state their full name and the agenda item they are testifying on. Each speaker may not have anyone else read their statement and is limited to a 1-minute presentation per item. All persons who have registered to testify remotely by video conference or phone will be called upon first. When your name is called, please monitor your screen and activate your audio feed when prompted. The following are some friendly reminders and tips. Video conference from a quiet location if possible. If you are watching the proceeding on Olelo, please mute your device at the time you are called to testify. When the timer on the screen reaches 0, please conclude your remarks promptly. For those who are joining us by telephone only, I will identify you by the last 3 digits of your phone number. When your number is called, please press *6 to unmute yourself when prompted. Once all the remote testifiers have testified, I will proceed to the in-person testimony in the council chambers. Persons who have not registered will be given an opportunity to speak following the oral testimonies of the registered speakers. Written testimonies, including the testifier's address, email address, and phone number, will be available to the public as described on the posted agenda. As a courtesy, please turn off all cell phones. And members, let's proceed on to agenda number 1. Resolution 23-35. This resolution grants a special management area use permit to Hawaiian Cement Corporation to allow the construction of a sand shed, retaining wall, septic tank with leach fields, and water line and fire hydrant improvements on the land zone I-2 Intensive Industrial District located at 91-055 Kaomi Loop in Honolulu and identified as tax map key 9-1-026:056. Members, we have posted to the agenda a proposed Committee Draft 1 version of the resolution, and for your information, a summary of the amendments is listed on the agenda. Members, we have listed an agenda addendum, another proposed CDE1 or Committee Draft 1 version of the resolution, OCS 2023-0314/4/3/2023 at 7:35 a.m. For your information, a summary of the amendments is listed on the agenda addendum. This Committee Draft 1 would add back Condition D.6, which would prohibit barbed wire fencing, and retain conditions of D.4, which would prohibit nighttime site work and construction activities. Joining us in the council chamber, we have Mr. Isaiah Sato from RM Tao, the applicant's agent, to give a brief presentation of the project to the committee. For your information, the presentation is available online as Miscellaneous Communication 155 of 2023. Mr. Sato. Isaiah. Oh, there you are. Okay.
Hello, council members here and members of the zoning committee. Thank you for allowing me to present the project today. I'm going to be sharing a short presentation. Jim Gomes, representative of Hawaiian Cement Corporation, is on the Zoom as well for any questions. Oh. Okay, so today I'm presenting on the Hawaiian Cement Sand Shed project, and we're going for a special management area major permit. And the current site is located in James Campbell Industrial Park out in Kapolei, Kalailoa on the west side of Oahu. And the existing site use is used for cement and sand storage, bagging operations, as well as truck loading operations there. We're proposing to construct a 38,000 square foot sand shed over an existing concrete surface. The sand shed will be approximately 50 feet tall. This project will also include a roughly 300-foot long retaining wall, a septic tank and leach field, as well as various water line and fire hydrant improvements. This slide shows our project site. So we are a few hundred feet away from the shoreline. We're not a shoreline parcel there. And our project is located at 91-055 Ko'omi Loop in Kapolei. The lot size is fairly large at about 7.6 acres there. This is another Google Earth visual of our project site there. Again, we aren't right adjacent to the shoreline. We're a little bit more inland there. So at the left end of this photo is where we have the sand shed areas, and on the right end is kind of where we have our bagging operations and then our entrances. I'll talk a little bit more in the next slide. Okay, so for some project site information first, our zoning is within the I-2 intensive industrial, city and county zoning. We are within the urban state land use district within flood zone D. We are within the SMA. And for the tsunami evacuation zone, a portion of the west side of the site is within the tsunami evacuation zone, and the east portion is within the extreme tsunami evacuation zone. There's no residences on the site. We're completely industrial uses, so we don't anticipate to have any challenges with that. This slide has the bulk of the information today, so I'm going to kind of start on the upper left and then kind of rotate around clockwise. So at the top portion of this plan here is the Ko'omi Loop, the city and county road, and the upper red is where we have the proposed sand shed area. So it's currently an existing concrete surface, and I have a photo of it in the next slide. But we're hoping to put a shed over that to help protect our sand from weather conditions. Moving more towards the right of that is an existing warehouse where we have some bagging operations, and currently that warehouse leads to a cesspool for our sewer, and we're hoping to improve that cesspool and to create a septic unit there. So there are no sewer facilities within Ko'omi Loop, so a septic was the best environmentally conscious option that we could go with there. In blue, we show water line improvements from that warehouse up to the city and county street there. And all the way in the bottom left is where we show the potential retaining wall location there, and that's also to help to protect the sand and the sand runoff, and I'll show that a little bit more in the next two slides. Oh, 3 slides, sorry, excuse me. So this shows just the sand shed. So it's a very simple industrial shed. It has a covering on the top around 50 feet high, and there's 3 sides with retaining walls there to keep the sand protected. So go backwards there. So on the far left of the screen, in the upper right, we show where a sand shed is located. In that upper left, excuse me. In the lower left, we have a secondary sand storage area. So we have pictures of those 2 spots coming up. So this area here is the lower sand storage area, which is on the lower left of that last site. So we're hoping to provide a retaining wall along the Makai side edge, and that'll help us contain the sand, especially when we have weather conditions that help push the sand and try to get it to run off towards the ocean. We're going to provide that protection there as well. On the west end of our project site, we're also providing a grass buffer to help contain our sand and erosion on site as well. This next slide shows the upper propose the upper left of that last screen, but this is where we're going to propose the sand shed location. So it's an existing concrete surface where we have piles of sand that we distribute to various contractors throughout the island of Oahu. But we're proposing to put a shed over these piles to help protect it from the environmental weather conditions there. So a few of the benefits for us is that we're able to reduce the weather impacts on the sand shed operations. It's able to help keep the sand free of moisture after we get it, which is something that's very important for the construction industry here too. We're also able to provide erosion and dust control measures for these sand operations. And lastly, we're able to help reduce the debris and landscape growth on the sand. So oftentimes when it gets wet and, Hawaii, seeds blowing in the wind, it grows a lot of landscape and it takes a lot more effort to process. And it also makes it significantly more difficult for the applicant, Hawaiian Cement Corporation. And that's the end of my slide. Just a few things I wanted to mention is that we're not within the sea level rise exposure area. We are away from the shoreline there. And our operations are going to continue to be exactly the same. We're just going to have a little bit more protection. There. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sato. Any questions for the members? Vice Chair Dos Santos.
Thank you, SA, for the presentation. What are the current measures in place to prevent runoff from the existing mound of sand?
So currently, we have an outside fence. Let me try to go back. And I think Jim's on the line too, he can help elaborate. But on the west end of the site, you can kind of see that white fence, and that helps protect it from wind and runoff towards the ocean. We're hoping to further protect it with a retaining wall right next to that. And I know in storm conditions, I believe Jim them have special products that they use to put onto the sand to help keep it from blowing off or help doing other things there.
Has your question been answered? Okay. Councilmember Cordero.
Thank you. Hi, Mr. Sato. Regarding the septic tank, it is noted, maybe not in the presentation, but in the findings of fact, the septic tank placement, is that strategic for any particular reason?
Yes, thank you for the question, Councilmember Cordero. So the operation that physically holds people with bathrooms is, if you see the green on the left side of those two green, there's that square building, and that's the main existing building on the site, and that's the only building with bathrooms on the site. So there are just employee bathrooms right there. So we strategically placed it as close to that as possible to limit the amount of intrusion into the ground that we need to do. As well as the area where we show the leach field is an area where we don't anticipate trucks. So we don't have a lot of our construction trucks coming through and driving over that area. So it's a good location for a leach field there.
Okay. My next question is relating to the 15-foot buffer strip. Regarding the vegetated buffer strip, it's only on the west side, or I think that's the west side of the area. Is it not needed along the rest of the location? And also, will that also help and be a part of erosion and environmental control?
Yes. So the buffer shown at the far left of this screen, it was strategically placed on that side because our civil engineer anticipates the runoff to go towards the ocean, towards the Makai side, and that runoff would flow in that direction. So we don't anticipate sand or other erosion to go in the other directions that way as well. And it's been designed in accordance with the city's erosion and sediment control standards and their stormwater quarterly plans.
Okay, thank you. And then my next question is relating to the potential loading stall area, which is near the existing fence line. And that goes out onto Kaomi Loop, yeah? Is that enough space? Are there enough traffic controls to help vehicles go in and out safely?
Yeah,
and also for anyone traversing Kaomi Loop?
No, that's a really good question. So the loading stall area that you're mentioning is right next to that bagging operation. It's above the septic tank I believe. So we have two main entrances to Komi Loop on the project site, one at the west end near the sand shed and the other on the east end there. So the loading zone is completely within our project site. So we'd anticipate guests to come in on the east main entrance, come up to that bagging operations area where they can load, purchase sand and other cementitious material and exit it that way.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Is there any further questions for the applicant? If not, Mr. Sato, thank you very much, and will you stick around for the other discussion that we have?
Okay, thank you.
At this time, may I call upon the administration, which is Ms. Dawn Takeuchi Apuna, Director of Department of Planning and Permitting, or Mr. Jiro Sumada? Oh, Dawn's here. Okay, please.
Aloha, Chair, members of the committee, Donna Puna, DPP. We are supportive of this proposed CD1 to the resolution.
Okay, thank you very much. Any discussion for the director? No discussion. The chair has one, Ms. Director Apuna. Very simple question is that when this particular measure was introduced, it addressed the issue of avoiding the nighttime work of our seabird fledging season from September 15th through December 15th. Is the policy now recommending a ban on all nighttime work year-round so that all developers understand that?
I think it depends on the project, so it isn't a across-the-board ban. We need to evaluate each project based by case by case and make a determination whether the lighting should be restricted in that way.
Okay, primarily because the policy the policy is that the department will be authorized to look at what will be approved without the protection of our seabirds on each of the different projects that come before the department and the city council. And I think the general public and for the members of the council, you should be aware of it. As the SMA comes up, some of them will be, mandated to have no nighttime operations and so forth. So I just wanted to bring that up for clarification. Members, at this time, may we now proceed to the remote testimony. We have Miss Angela Young. Oh, I did call Mr. Gomes already. Mr. Gomes, would you like to say a few words from Hawaiian Cement Corporation? Or Isaiah, is he on?
Chair, test.
Yes.
Oh, there he is.
Are you looking? Okay, please, Mr. Gomes. Would you like to say a few words? Your not contractor, but your consultant did a good job in the presentation. But if you want to highlight the reasons why this particular project is before the council, we'll be happy to hear your thoughts.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much for allowing me to come on board. There was a question in reference to runoff. This particular property was Hawaiian Cement's primary property since 1960 to produce cement. We closed that facility down in 2000. We partitioned it out, and the other owners of that 40-acre property are currently occupying it. So the runoff itself cannot go onto the road. It has to go towards the back end of the property. We put BMPs or different products out there to prevent any kind of runoff from the sand itself. We also put a protective layer on the sand to protect it from the wind. But it's a constant battle. This is a sand that's very expensive, so we need to protect it. And part of the protection process with this warehouse is also upgrading our facilities, as mentioned by Isaiah, in reference to the water line, fire hydrants, and also the bathroom side as well. So I'm open for questions if you have any particular questions you have about this project.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Gomes, excuse me, Mr. Jim Gomes? Well, I have a question, Mr. Gomes, as a chair. This particular project is looking out 10, 20 years down the road that the expansion will incorporate a larger volume of maybe the importation of the composition of sand and cement and etc.? Or will you maybe come back sometime in the next 10 years to say it is a little small and we have to expand it?
Chair, there's no way to expand it even further than what we're requesting here. The sand operation is very limited. It's for golf courses. And all the sand that you see on the golf courses primarily come from us. It's an imported sand.
Okay.
So it's a very limited, small market. So it has to be protected because of that.
Okay, great. And one final thought, and this is in regards to not the stormwater, but our wastewater, because you are now going into septic tanks. What is the volume of what your septic tanks can hold as far as the number of employees or the volume that will be addressed as far as you're expanding, you're not expanding it. You're decommissioning our cesspools in replacement of septics because of the federal law. More importantly is the question of how large can this septic tank accommodate human beings, meaning the leach field plus the tank. Like, for example, presently you may have 150 employees. This particular leach septic tank may accommodate.
Yeah, so we have 4 employees there, Chair.
4?
It's not a big,
Okay.
4 employees total that run this operation. The cement, our bagging facility, and
Okay.
and our sand operation is not a big manpower intensive operation. We do have customers that come through, but that's a small amount. So it's that leach field area is pretty big, probably about an acre that we can use.
Okay. Okay. I just wanted to say thank you very much for your environmental concerns that at least the private sector is moving ahead in the replacement of cesspools in regards to utilization of septic tanks. Thank you.
Okay.
Members, are there any further questions for Mr. Gomes? Okay. Oh, Councilmember Wire, nice to see you this morning. We're on agenda number 1, which is the resolution for the SMA permit to Hawaiian Cement Corporation. Okay, next we have our very good perennial testifier, Miss Angela Young. Good morning, Miss Young.
Good morning. Angela Melody Young, testifying neither in support nor in opposition, just to provide comments. So I'm reading the City Ordinance Chapter 14, and the definitions of pollutant is includes construction waste material, soil, sediment, sand, sewage, dredge spoils. So those are pollutants, and then it can cause sediment. And so we're just providing comments about the erosion and sediment control plan, and how that project will what the impacts of that will be for that project, because any sedimentation and land disturbing development within the city are subject to environmental considerations, and then it has to go through the erosion and sediment control plan, and so yeah.
Ms. Young, thank you very much for your concerns about the erosion and sediment. I believe Mr. Gomes and Mr. Sato has stated for the record that they are addressing all of these concerns, but you have educated us very much on your concerns. Thank you. Okay, members, at this point in time, we have a caller, and it's 808-991. The last 3 digits, 911. 991. May I have your name?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
he's on for the next one, for the next bill.
Okay. Got it. Members, we will now proceed with the remote testimony. Madam Clerk, do we have any remote testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Thank you very much. We will now proceed with in-person testimony. Madam Clerk, do we have any in-person testifying?
Chair, there are none.
Thank you very much. At this time, if there is anyone else in the council chamber who would like to testify on Resolution 23-35 with the project for the SMA project for Hawaiian Cement. Is there anyone else in the council chamber who would like to testify? Please come forward to the testifier podium to my left and state your name for the record. Okay, Madam Clerk, are there any?
Chair, there are none.
Okay, great. Members, we are now in discussion with those who are here and those who have testified, from Mr. Sato, Mr. Gomes, and Ms. Dawn, oh boy, Apuna. Okay. Any questions, members? Director, any questions for the members? If there are none, may we proceed on for our decision making. At this time, the chair would like to recommend that Resolution 23-35 be amended to the Committee Draft 1 listed on the agenda addendum. Everyone knows what the agenda addendum is, okay. Is there any discussion? Oh, I have to state the number also. OCS 2023-0314/4/3/2023 at 7:35 a.m. for the general public to make reference to the agenda addendum. Are there any discussion? If there's none, objections or reservations? Hearing none, the resolution has been amended to the Committee Draft 1. The chair now recommends that the Resolution 23-35 Committee Draft 1 be reported out for adoption. Any discussion? Any objections? Any reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Sato, Mr. Gomes. Moving on to agenda item number 2, Bill 56 of 2022, Committee Draft 1. This bill addresses exemptions from the requirements to obtain a building permit. Members, we have posted to the agenda 2 proposed Committee Draft 2 versions of the bill, one submitted by Councilmember Tupola and one submitted by Councilmember Wire. For your information, summaries of the amendments are listed on the agenda. Members, we have also distributed a hand-carried Committee Draft 2 proposed by Councilmember Tupola. I will defer to Councilmember Tupola for an explanation of her hand-carried Committee Draft 2.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members of the committee. So the posted draft is very similar, and the hand-carried one, I'm just going to delineate the differences. So I'm going to go through A through H on the handout that came in. We did just give it to the director. So on letter A, this one is already from the previous CD, and it's adding that fences that are on corners are not exempt from the permitting. That was a concern by the department, that fences that are on corners should be permitted. So that's written in there. Letter B, I incorporated Councilmember Wire's suggestion into this draft so that everything would be all together, moving the 75 to the 10,000 for the component replacement valuation cap. Letter C, DPP was concerned that in addition to the remodeling, that we also write the sentence, provided that rooms, walls, doors, and windows are not relocated. So everything else is the same. They just wanted to make sure rooms aren't changing, windows aren't changing, doors aren't changing. Letter D is the same exact one from the previous CD, and this has to do with the increase in valuation for electrical work. Letter E, F, and G were suggestions given by Councilmember Dos Santos Tam, and I incorporated it into the electrical exemption portion of this bill. Letter E talks about restoring function operations of a system within the original design energy output of the system. So basically for an upgrade of technology and not a change of the actual solar system. Letter F includes the addition of a battery energy storage system to an already permitted PV project. Letter G is, so the main, what you see here is overhead line fed residential main panel. This is actually by HECO. And when they require this, they check all the building codes, and they're the ones that make sure that the installation is approved. So that, again, is for an upgrade to the main panel service and not any new PV system, just an upgrade to the main panel service. And then letter H, any miscellaneous technical and non-substantive amendments. So that is what the hand carried states, line for line. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Members, any questions for the sponsor of the measure? Okay, let's proceed on to the administration. Don Takeuchi Apuna, Director of Department of Planning and Permitting. But before I proceed on, Director, maybe Councilmember Wire, would you like to state for the record your committee draft?
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, largely was increasing that threshold we discussed just now to 10,000. And I would be willing to entertain withdrawing my CD given Councilmember Tupola incorporating the 10,000 and also working with DPP. But I'm interested to hear DPP's response to her hand carry.
Okay, Director.
If the chair is going to entertain it.
Yeah. Is Director Apuna ready? Go, please proceed.
Thank you, Chair. So just if we can kind of go through, we are supportive of the $10,000 valuation that was presented by Councilmember Wire and Councilmember Tupola. In subsection 11 on page 2 of the bill, subsection B11, thank you, Councilmember Tupola, for working with us. We just wanted to make a few additional changes or recommendations for that section, that instead of interior remodeling, it be referred to repair or replacement, which is the terms that are more frequently used in the building code. And I think that we had another some additional language to add as far as that there would not be any change to mechanical, electrical, plumbing.
Can I ask a question, Director? Are you still on letter C?
Actually, yeah, so B11.
Okay, so you're saying that for this section, not only the change of the word interior remodeling to repair or replacement, but
Right.
taking that last phrase from letter B that says do not involve any electrical, plumbing, or mechanical?
Yes.
Okay,
Is that
so-
in there? I'm sorry.
No, it's in 18-3.1B10. You're asking that it be added to B11.
Yes.
Okay, I see.
Yes, and then there was one additional, if we could reinsert, it's already in there, the valuation language that is currently in subsection 11, because we need that for calculating permit fees as well as for real property tax on the valuation of the property. So it's in there, but if we could just re-add it in at the end, provided that the values thereof must be included as part of the value of any new construction for which a permit is required by this code, and for the purpose of determining the amount of the fee to be paid for such permit.
Director, could I ask another question? Chair, is this okay?
Please proceed.
Thank you. Can we go to 11 one more time? I just want to make sure I got this. So I'm on page 211. It says interior remodeling, which you wanted to say interior repair or replacement that does not affect building square footage or the number of rooms or bathrooms or modifies location of rooms, walls, or windows, including but not limited to painting, installation of floor covering, cabinet, countertop work, and replacement of existing fixtures, including windows, doors, and appliances, and does not involve any electrical, plumbing, or mechanical installations, provided that the values thereof must be included as the value of the new construction for which a permit is required by this code for the purpose of determining the amount of the fee to be paid for such permit. My question was, in the middle of the paragraph, it did say does not involve electrical, plumbing, or mechanical. So it wasn't summarized in the amendment because that was from the last one.
Okay.
But is that verbiage there in the middle okay?
Yes.
Okay, and then continue on with the fee paid, please, what you just said.
So it was deleted prior, provided that the values thereof,
Provided that the yes.
so if we could reinsert that, I guess, at the end of the whole, semicolon at the end of the whole paragraph.
I still have it on the proposal, provided that the values thereof must be included as part of the value of any new construction for which a permit is required. That's the
Okay, I'm
verbiage you
sorry.
want, correct?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, I see it. I'm
Okay.
getting confused between.
No,
the
no, it's
different-
okay. I just wanted to make sure because everything you said, I've written it down and like meticulously kept in everything you wanted. So I want to make sure I got it right. So for number 11, there's just interior remodeling. That should say interior repair and replacement.
Yes.
Okay, please
Thank you.
proceed.
Thank you. And then with regard to the proposed addition of the electrical exemption, J, K, and L on page 4 of the hand-carried CD2, I think we understand the intent and we support it, but we need more time to review just as a matter of health and safety. So at this time, we are not in full support of these amendments, but we would like to take a closer look and see if we can work it out.
One question for you, Director. So for J and L, because this one is, and I just wanted to note this, because I know we were so busy yesterday. Director and I had a million meetings about other things besides this bill. But for J, this one is a technology upgrade. And for L, it was the main service panel that HECO requires when it gets outdated. So just for your information, the J and L is actually required, and building code is, the plans are from HECO to the customer. Now for K, I remember in our meeting about Solar App Plus that you guys are trying to get the app to work for storage. So my humble suggestion would be to maybe talk with your guys over maybe size of storage, compatible storage that they think could fit under this, because I do see that perhaps when we were having that storage conversation that you guys might be able to get it to go with the Solar App Plus, but I don't know when and if that will come. But that's all I had to say about those. Thank you, Director. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Okay, Vice Chair.
Thank you. I just want to
Understand.
pick up upon the solar storage, as well as the just generally the solar equipment items in J, K, and L, and just provide an explanation of why I asked Councilmember Tupola to consider adding in provisions here. You know, there's pretty substantial federal funding being made available through the Bipartisan Infrastructure Plan, as well as the Inflation Reduction Act. And you know, Hawaii homeowners, I want them to be able to take advantage of this, and don't want them to be stuck in a permitting queue and miss out on the opportunity for credits or rebates. And so, you know, just diving in a little bit more, I wanted to ask the director, you know, what we're doing specifically on solar permits within the next 6 months so that people can take advantage of these federal programs that are coming down the pipeline if we're not going to exempt them via these amendments.
Thank you, Councilmember. We are definitely working, and we created, I had mentioned a separate line for solar. I think right now we have about 350 residential solar permits in the queue, and we're working very hard at getting that down and to even train staff to focus on those permits. So we're working very hard, and I'm very hopeful that we can get that backlog taken care of in the next few months. So I think that we can take care of it without having to include this type of legislation, and still, you know, be able to make sure that health and safety is all taken care of.
Okay, members, any other discussion? Okay. Seeing none, at this time, the chair, after listening to this discussion, the chair would like to, oh, excuse me. Okay, we have, okay. Okay, yep. I'm sorry. We'll now proceed with remote testimony. Madam Clerk, are there any remote testifiers?
Yes, Chair, there is testifiers.
Okay, let's proceed. Kaiulani Shinsato of Hawaii Electric.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. I'm Kaiulani Shinsato from Hawaiian Electric. We submitted comments with concerns in opposition to the prior version of the bill. We'll have to take a look at the most recent version, but I am available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Shinsato. Maybe for the members' edification, Ms. Shinsato, would you like to state for the record what were some of the concerns of Hawaii Electric in the committee draft 1? Excuse me. 2.
Thank you for the question. Our concern was with the section of the bill. It was 28, specifically subsection B and C, that essentially would grant sort of a waiver of getting a building permit for systems valued at $25,000 or less. And so our preference is, rather than to go with an exemption, is to go with something like Solar App Plus or a functionally equivalent type of tool that the director previously mentioned. And that way, at least the DPP is giving some check to these systems rather than no check at all.
Chair, can I ask a question?
Yeah, please. Please.
Aloha, Ms. Shinsato. Thank you for being here with us. I'll just summarize, and if you could take a look at on the can carried, and we'll email it over to you on letter EFG, which is now a new JKL under electrical. So that ABC that you're looking at, we did speak with the director and we deferred from the cost and valuation determining the exemption to just technology upgrades and the main panel service. So I think the one that specifically involves HECO is the one regarding the overhead line fed residential main panel service. So if you could take a look at that, and I'll work with you guys and the director until we can kind of massage this into something that only involves just our ability to have people who already have a permitted system to be able to upgrade. Meaning like the main panel service, or if something, for whatever reason, older homes, lines needed to fix a system that they already have on their home, if that makes sense.
Thank you for the clarification. We'll definitely take a look and reach out if we have any questions. Thank you, Councilmember.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further questions for Ms. Shinsato? If not, we have Mr. Evan Oy of NAOP.
Testifier is in person.
Yeah. Oh, excuse me.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Evan Oy on behalf of NIAP Hawaii. We do appreciate the intent of this bill, and we did provide some comments. We do prefer the original version. However, the CD2s do, the proposed CDs do look acceptable. So, available for any questions. Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, Mr. Oy, who do you represent by any chance at this point in time? What organization?
I represent NIAP Hawaii. We're a developers association.
Okay. Okay. Council members?
Can I ask a few questions?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you so much for being here. And thank you for taking interest in this bill. I'm very interested in making sure that whatever permits are in the pipeline that don't need to be there are taken out. So that's the main purpose of this bill. When you said you guys prefer the original one, are you talking about the one that BIA gave to me, or which original one are you talking about?
I believe that is the version
The
that we
BIA one.
Yes. However, we did read the CD2 and we do appreciate the.
So I can tell you that the one provision that they submitted to me when we originally started this, and I've been working with the director to try to find a middle ground between what BIA is suggesting and what the department can do. I was able to work with them on the fence requirement, getting that one up to the 6 feet, but not on corners and not in flood zones. I tried my best on the remodeling one, and the director was okay with us keeping that in. So I know that the BIA gave me a lot more exemptions than what they see here, and I know everyone wants to see that, but I did want the department to also feel comfortable with the health and safety concerns that, of course, they're going to face if people start to do things that aren't safe. But thank you for being here. And if you have any other ones based upon this, I'll give you my copy of the most recent one. Let me know. I mean, we are on the last round of this, and I want to make sure to get it right. So thank you for being here. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Next, we have the caller, 808-991. Please State your name and the measure that you're now speaking on, and I hope this is Bill 56.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, and Committee. My name is Rhino Irwin, and I am the owner of Hawaii Unified. We are a general contractor located out in Makaha. We are also the third largest private employer on the Leeward Coast. Holistically, we are in support of, I'd like to submit testimony in support of Bill 56 for the overall expediting of the permitting process that has impacted our business and our company and our ability to furnish jobs out here. Specifically, I would like to touch on the electrical portion, J, K, and L, just to add some insight to that. For the technology upgrade, what I would see as a benefit here are for homeowners and residents that have existing photovoltaic systems that have become unoperational and are now incurring large utility bills and a lot of times still paying for a solar finance fee. And the technology has advanced to where the current equipment that they have is no longer available to be replaced one for one. So minor electrical upgrades need to be made in order to get the system operational again. It would be to everyone's advantage to be able to just upgrade that equipment without having to pull a lengthy permitting process. Speaking on item K, the storage addition, a few years back, there was a incentive that was implemented called CGS Plus that gave homeowners a rebate for any electricity that was being pushed back to the grid. That program is still in existence. However, the compensation given to the homeowner has significantly reduced, and therefore it is more economical for them to add a battery energy storage. So they already have an existing PV system. However, they're not getting much credit or compensation for the electricity that's being produced and going back to the grid. So it's more financially viable if they were able to easily add battery storage. Plus, like was mentioned here, there is federal incentives, federal tax incentives. And in addition, HECO is also offering battery bonus programs that is for a limited time. So it would be good if the homeowners could take advantage of that. Lastly, on item L under electrical, the main panel upgrade, HECO just furnished a sustainability report that we are now at 37% penetration for renewable energy rooftop solar. However, what we have left in the available market, a lot of times are homes that we would, not be the easy pickings, as we'd say, or the low-hanging fruit. They're more challenging, specifically older homes that have outdated 100-amp electrical service panels where it will require a main panel upgrade in order for them to even have solar, to be feasible to have solar on their homes, or to add an EV charger, which, of course, we are pushing the adoption of electric vehicles. However, with only 100-amp main panel, they will not be able to charge their vehicle at their home, which is a major problem for our infrastructure. So what we're requesting here, the process that takes place, is that we have to obtain a permit before we can request for HECO to make the engineering designs that we need to follow to even process a main panel upgrade. So the process can take 3 or 4 more months. So the fact that HECO is actually doing the engineering, we are doing the work, and then HECO has to come out and schedule a shutdown, and then we tie the electrical back in. I think there's plenty of oversight there where a simple overhead line main panel upgrade should not need a permit.
Okay, thank you very much for your testimony. Members, any questions for the remote testifier? Okay, Councilmember Tupolo.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Irwin, for testifying today. My quick question about letter L, and we do have HECO on the line, is what you're saying is that the permit is required first and then HECO starts the design process. So in a hypothetical world, if this was exempted, what would the process look like?
We would submit preliminary design drawings to HECO. They would review and make any changes that need to be made. And their process, typically we're seeing in 3 to 6 weeks. So it would just expedite the process considerably if we didn't have to have the front side permitting wait.
So it would still have to run through the utility?
Correct. And then after we do the work, we still have to get an inspection by the DPP to approve the work that has been done before we can get the permit signed off.
And so if this was exempted, would that inspection still be required per DPP, or should that be added?
I would be in support of having it added. It's just the wait time to get the actual permit before we can submit to HECO that is creating the backlog, I believe.
Okay. Offline, I'll talk with the director about that, because I did think the inspection part should still stay, because if HECO is making the plans. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I agree with that assessment.
Okay. Yeah, that I can talk with the director. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Irwin.
Okay, any further discussion?
Thank you.
Mr. Irwin?
No, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much for your insights on solar energy. Any further discussion, members, at this point in time? If not, let's proceed on. We have the remote testifiers already done, Madam Clerk. So how about moving on to in-person, which we did have Mr. Evan Owe. Do we have any other in-person testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Thank you very much. And now, is there anyone else in the council chamber who would like to testify? Please come forward. If there is none, members, we are in discussion on this particular measure.
Chair?
Yes.
I guess my request would be if I could have just one more month to work on this. We've worked out a lot of the fine details, but we're on third reading, and I don't want it to proceed if I just have small things that I can add, and I need to meet with the director about this just to make sure, and of course I want to meet with HECO. I spoke verbally all of the things that I was going to change, but I want to make it written for the members and for the council, if that's okay with the chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other thoughts for discussion at this point in time? If not, I think I'll take the advice of the sponsor of the measure. That would be Councilmember Tupolo, that at this time the chair would like to recommend that action on Bill 56 CD2, CD1 be postponed to a date and time to be determined by the committee chair. Okay, and for the record, for all of you, this particular measure will be coming up next month also to meet that deadline of getting it time and date to be determined. It is going to be next month when we have our meeting again. It was a lot as far as for the general public and for the council members to digest a hand-carried CD2 on the CD1. And there was 2 CD1 members. So that's the reason why we're going to be postponing it as far as having another hearing next month. Okay, Madam Director Apuna, is that okay?
Yes.
And then let's have a final draft, like I used to experience what we call a conference draft before coming to our next hearing, that we have a final draft in form, rather than trying to adjust to all the different amendments that are being proposed. Is that okay, Councilmember Wire, Cordero, Kiana?
Thank you, Chair, for your recommendation, and I apologize to the committee. I feel like these hearings, even though they're a month apart, they just sneak up, and I have been working really hard on this, but I will have it done this next month so that we can finish it. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, you're very welcome. Thank you. So any discussion on the postponement? Any objections or reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Thank you very much for your patience, members. Moving on to agenda number 3, Bill 6, 2023. This bill helps alleviate the backlog of building permit applications and reviews by giving the building official the authority to allow other outside means of building permit application review for compliance with pertinent codes. Members, today we have posted to the agenda a proposed Committee Draft 1 version of the bill. For your information, a summary of the amendments is listed on the agenda. At this time, representing the administration is Ms. Dawn Takeuchi Apuna. Director, please.
Thank you, Chair. The department supports this bill, which will allow us, as we fix our processes, get the capacity to bring our backlog down and to function more efficiently. This would help us temporarily to get outside help in our permit review. We are supportive of the proposed CD1, and we would like to offer, I'm sorry I don't have language today, but for the committee to consider adding penalties for false statements that would work in conjunction with this to ensure that we don't have rubber stampers and that there are consequences for people who aren't 100% very careful about the work they do without having to go through our permitting process. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, we'll start off with Councilmember Cordero, followed by Kiana, and then Wire.
Thank you, Chair. Director Apuna, thanks for bringing that up because I did have that question about the how we would be able to fine or penalize such false statements. As you mentioned, I didn't even know how to describe such occurrences, but how would the enforcement look like or the penalties look like?
So I think we have a lot to think about how we're going to implement. We've looked at different jurisdictions like the city of Chicago, New York, and some jurisdictions in Arizona. And what they do is they have a whole program for training and rules and regulations for these professionals who want to self-certify. And I think that you could build in different types of mechanisms, like if we find out we can do audits. So if we find that some of the work is not living up to code, we can make note of that, and we can either kick them out of the program or look for false statements, and then use part of an ordinance that has these penalties in that way. So there's a lot to think about as far as the administrative rule part and the programming and the training, but I think an ordinance like that would be helpful as far as penalties.
Okay, and which branch within or division within DPP would be issuing such penalties or reviewing and auditing?
It'd probably be within our PIB permits issuance branch, I'm assuming right now. I mean, we need to think about it some more, but within our whole permitting branch.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Kiano, followed by Wire.
Thank you, Chair. First, I wanted to talk about process. Can you do a quick overview of the current process for approval of a building permit?
So there's first the submittal of the application, and then it goes through our pre-screen process where that bot is and includes manual pre-screen to check for the formatting of the plans. And then once it passes that pre-screen, it goes to code review. So whether it's residential, it goes to our residential code review, or if it's a commercial project, it'll go through our commercial, which has different types of plans examiners. And it also includes routing of different agencies, if necessary, based on the type of permit. And then when all that checks out, it goes to approve to issue, and we notify the applicant and require payment and contractor statements.
Okay, thank you. What parts of the process are currently allowed to be done by third-party reviewers, and what parts are done by DPP?
So the third-party reviewers, they kind of act like a reviewer like DPP. So they review plans, and then I think at some point that we make the ultimate approval of their plans.
Do you have a percentage, perhaps, of how many is done by third-party review of all permits?
I think roughly it's 60% as last checked, which was a while ago. So that may have changed.
Okay, and I think you answered this other question. DPP currently has final review after third-party reviewer, correct? DPP has final review.
I believe so, yes.
Okay, that's important.
Yes.
Okay, moving on to historic preservation. Certain projects risk encountering iwi kupuna, archaeological sites, and other historic and cultural properties. I'm trying to understand, how does the current process ensure that DPP's kuleana to mitigate impacts to iwi and historic sites does not get delegated?
So I think, through third-party review?
Yeah. Is that anything relating to historic preservation is retained by DPP, correct?
Yes, I mean, I think we have overall, our requirement is in the rules to make sure that that requirement is fulfilled. I'm sorry, I don't have the details of how, whether it's routed, I mean, the routing. I'd have to check
Okay,
and get back to you.
but yes, and it is anticipated, of course, thank you for the mayor sending over the recommendations for the Oahu Historic Preservation Commission to assist with projects that warrant further review. Where in the process would that occur relative to the point in the process that third-party reviewers are used?
The Oahu
Historic Preservation Commission.
I'm hopeful that that process would come very far, before the permitting process, but that also needs to be worked out and determined.
Okay, things to factor in. Concerns about third-party reviewers. I understand that DPP audits have noted that third-party reviewers have overwhelmingly approved building permit applications that did not comply with existing codes, for example, electrical codes. What has been done to address those issues, and do those third-party certifiers still participate in the review process?
So I think it was last year that we had 100% audit of these third-party reviews, and we did find that some of them were not living up to what was required of them.
And is there, what do you do with them? Are they still allowed to review?
I think some are. I think the audit itself put them all on notice that that we're watching what they're doing. I mean, it's kind of makes, we shouldn't have to because they should be qualified in doing what they're supposed to do. But from what I understand, the audit itself helped to encourage the third-party reviews to be a lot more careful and diligent in their work. We do have in the rules right now, I think we can remove them from the program, and we have other penalties for them.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that you work on accountability because we can't afford to have a pattern of this occurring. Can you explain the difference between self-certification and third-party certification?
So self-certification is the actual professional, whether it's a licensed engineer or architect, that will go through the program that we set up and be certified and understand the parameters. And they, for certain types of projects, which we would probably determine through the rules, be able to certify their plans as meeting all the requirements that we would normally check for through the building permit process. And so they could certify their work as being permitted. As opposed to a third-party review, they conduct reviews much like our internal plan reviewers. That's
Got
their
it.
job.
Okay, and so we do allow self-certification, correct? We do allow self-certification now.
Not as a general rule. I think that there are certain ordinances. Well, let me take that back. No, I would say we don't at this point. So
With regard to the Department of Hawaiian Homelands, you and I have had a discussion on this before. What is the current process, and is the MOU that you guys normally have, is that signed yet?
I don't believe it's signed yet. It's still going through some iterations, but for Hawaiian Homelands and other government agencies, they're exempt from our permit review. So they can, I guess through supremacy, they can say that we are not subject. So that's different.
Okay, I do understand, however, that there's challenges with regard to the banking industry not feeling that they would like some DPP oversight. I will talk to you offline on that. With the $600 million that they are pressed to spend down. I just don't want any pilikia for some of the projects. I want it to be able to move smoothly. And if there's a concern with the banking industry, we just need to make sure that we ameliorate their concerns and that indeed DPP says that they are able to self-certify, And lastly, what disincentivizes applicants to self-certify projects that do not comply with existing codes?
I think, setting up the penalties and making sure that we have a strong program that really reviews and has oversight over the self-certification program and professionals.
Thank you for your answers.
Thank you.
I'm finished, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, Councilmember Wire, followed by Tupola.
Mahalo, Chair. Thank you, Director. Appreciate the bill and just the proactive response in terms of trying to address the immediate issue we have with permitting. I'm curious, so what is the mechanism that third-party review was allowed previously if we're amending this ROH now?
So the third-party review program has been a while for a long time, and it's based on DPP rules. Right now, it's administrative rules.
Okay, so you're already allowed to do it, and this is just kind of clarifying the scope of what you're able to do?
There should be some statutory authority based upon which rules are created.
Okay.
So that's what this bill would serve to do, is provide that statutory authority.
Okay, I appreciate that. Do you know how other jurisdictions compare in terms of their use of both third-party review and self-certification?
So yeah, we're trying to research because we know that it's out there and people are doing it. Other jurisdictions have backlogs as well. So it's again setting up rules that are very structured and have consequences and have training for the professionals so that they understand what the expectations are and the penalties or whatever, so that it's done a certain way. So we continue to look at those rules because if this bill passes, we want to have that set up in a way that makes sense. But it will take a lot of effort and work for us to monitor and make sure that it's done right.
Okay, and then, so at the back end, because you're kind of explaining the difference between third-party review and self-certification, what does that look like at the back end in terms of DPP subsequent review? Or is there any difference?
So I guess just looking directly at the law, it says that the building official shall review and approve, basically. So I think it's just allowing outside entities to review and approve, but I think ultimately we want to, and it's us exploring as well how much is our approval, and or if it's in conjunction with the third-party reviewer or the self-certifier. I think that needs to be kind of well thought out too.
Okay, so it sounds like they're kind of treated the same in a way in terms of the level of DPP review of the permitting.
Yes.
Okay.
For third-party review, yeah, I think that third-party review is basically the entity is doing what DPP does as far as reviewing the permit.
Okay.
Almost to the very end.
They go through the same training or the same course you mentioned earlier?
So the rules right now, there isn't necessarily training. I think there's some testing and basic qualifications of those professionals. But I think we also want to go back, revisit those rules, and make them stronger and more stringent.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate that. Because like I said, I think it is needed in terms of the immediate issues that we're facing. But then I'm also curious, do you see this as a long-term solution, or is it more of a short-term response, understanding that we need to build capacity in the department to provide the services that all of us are paying for, right, with our property tax?
Right. No, definitely the latter. We want to fix DPP to the point where we actually don't need third-party review or self-certification. Like, people should be able to apply and get their permit very quickly and timely, which would probably reduce the market for these other options. So definitely for temporary, to bring the backlog down and give options to different applicants and for professionals. So that is the intent.
Okay, because I asked, and last question, just curious if there's any consideration as to whether there should have been sunsetting built into the bill in terms of we can revisit it in, say, 5 years and see what's the status of the department, what's staffing capacity, have we built up, that capacity, or do we still need to, rely on outside resources?
Great. Yeah, we would be supportive of a sunset. Enough time for us to get the program out there and let it run for a while and see how it works. But our ultimate and number one priority is to fix our processing so that we can do all of it.
Yeah, I think that's really clear. So appreciate all your work. So mahalo, Director. Mahalo, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Tupola, please.
Thank you. Aloha, Chair. Director, the sunset is in the CD1 and it's 7 years. So I'm not sure if that is new, but it is on the new version that we were given. So I wanted to go back on the question about the differentiation. And I can kind of hear you saying it, but I'm just going to kind of parse it out real clear. So we have the pre-screen, we have the plan review, we have the code review, we have the issuance of the permit, more or less, right? That's what the pipeline looks like.
Right.
So for clarity, third-party reviewers are not actually given any preference as of right now. They wait in line like everyone else does for their permits, but they take tests. They show that they know the code so that they can kind of check their own work. But every third-party reviewer actually still has to put their whole application into the pipeline that DPP reviews, correct?
It doesn't go through the same permitting, and I would need to get more clarification of exactly but I think at the end that they are, I think they come in, I think they're somehow in our system in the beginning, but at the end there is some final approval that we're involved in.
Yeah, maybe we can get clarity on that offline, but the third-party reviewers that I've met with are still in the 1 to 3 year wait. So as far as I know of the ones that we've worked with, they still have to face the same thing, right? So they go through the pre-screen. All they're given is the ability to say that they're a third-party reviewer and they can help someone who maybe doesn't have the background that they have to get the permit and the application up to par, because they're supposed to be the ones that kind of help them. Hey, you don't understand the code, we do, so let us help you write this a little bit better. You don't understand the application process, we do, so we'll help you do this a little bit better. But as far as right now, and we can have a meeting with them, but these are people who have taken the test. Their names are listed on the city and county website, first, last names, name of their company. And it's also a checkbox of what they are allowed to do the review for, because it's not for everything. It's for whatever their specialty field is, whether architect or whatnot. So I just wanted to make it clear that it's not necessarily like they can run away with a permit, because there is still like some DPP approvals and issuance that has to happen. And there are a handful of them that are still very frustrated that they're still kind of wading through that process, even with the knowledge that they have and the tests that they've taken per the city to be qualified to be called a third-party reviewer.
Right.
So
I think part of it might be that they elect for some of the review to be through our department. Like they might not be proficient in, I don't know, electrical.
Right.
So
Because some of them are just electrical or just mechanical.
Right.
So they can't even do all their plans by themselves.
So that's on them, but that's their choice to go through, right? So, yeah, but generally, third-party review does not come through the permitting process as a general rule. Like they're supposed to, the third-party review should be able to review the whole thing. But there's certainly different ways of doing it depending on the third-party review, the applicant, and the capability of the third-party reviewer.
So in this revision in this proposed bill, it says the building official shall review, or cause the same to be reviewed by a third-party reviewer, or professional authorized to self-certify that the plans, etc. So I'm just kind of making clear that these are all actually or statements, meaning that there's very little differentiation between the third-party review and the self-certification, because as I see it, the self-certification will also be field-related. So whatever field or content you're certified for, maybe you're an architect or maybe you're this, you'll be able to self-certify those plans for which you're approved to do, correct? The self-certification will be similar, where you have to prove that you have knowledge and insight in that field, and therefore you should be able to self-certify.
Yes, it would be specific to their plans that they are stating meet the code for which they yeah, so they're a professional in or expert at.
Because that's what I'm trying to say here is because there's the or statement, to me, the self-certification and the third-party review are very similar. Because for third-party review, you are specified for one specific field, you register, you take the test for it, and you can only do that one, and you're the reviewer for that particular. And for self-certification, I don't see a huge difference in what it does. Maybe it's in a different field, but then again, the third-party reviewers can happen in multiple fields as well. I would suggest too, in regards to the rulemaking, right, that it just be found within the same rulemaking. And to your point about the fines, because everyone is required to be insured, right? So everyone who does this is supposed to be like, if they did something that was haphazard or didn't work, we're supposed to be able to take a lawsuit against them and possibly activate their insurance and say, hey, you know, you guys were insured on this project. It ended up not going the way it was supposed to. I think the second thing before a fine should be to repeal their ability to do it, right? So you're now not being a third-party reviewer. You're not being able to self-certify because that means that maybe you have a timeout, I don't know, a year or something where you're like, hey, if anything happens, we've given you a warning and you're still doing these things. I think that would be a more pertinent punishment that would actually take bad actors off the list and off the ability to do it, because there is a inability sometimes with DPP to enforce the fines and follow up. I'm just giving you some suggestions. And then as well, when you pull the permit for some of the building, you know, it's under 25,000, 20% of the project, like it should be equal to the work that they did. That's what I think. So instead of like a random amount, the equal of whatever happened, if it went bad, should be the fine of that, what the permit was supposed to be for. That way, every single consequence is related to the work they did, from insurance to you can't be a self-certified or a third-party reviewer now till it's equal to the amount that now cost us the work to do. Does that make sense, kind of?
Right. Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's different ways to address the bad actors. So
I'm kind of looking at this long list of all of our fines. And, you know, I want to do something that's going to make sense, but also can stop it at the root, because there are many people that go from thousands to tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands, and we still can't get things to stop. So I think it would be an easier way is to kind of remove that ability to continue to do self-certification or third-party reviews, and that would help to stop it immediately. I don't know, just a thought. I do want to talk with you offline, though, about possibly how this is different or the same, because I think it's actually very similar, and I think that we should be cognizant of the fact that this might actually help us permanently and not just for an interim, because if we permanently want people to get up to par with some of these things, we should build in a mechanism whereby we're permanently securing our ability to do that, as opposed to thinking one day all of this will go away and we might not need this, because I think it'll take some years to acclimate to where we want it to be. Just a humble suggestion. So,
okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Councilmember Tupola, any further discussion for the director? Councilmember Tyler Dos Santos Tam.
Thank you. I appreciate the intention to add language covering false statements. And, you know, speaking of how we can further hold the future self-certifiers or even third-party reviewers accountable, I see in here that there's a provision that would allow the director to adopt rules. Is it your recommendation that those be done via rule, or should we do this in the ordinance as well to make it clear what the punishments would be?
Well, if it's in the, probably it needs to be in the ordinance, but we would adopt it within the rules as well.
Okay. And then I understand that there is that sunset after 7 years. How do we arrive at 7 years?
I think it was, it wasn't, it was proposed by the council, by the chair.
Okay. That's it from me. Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion for the director? For the clarification on the 7 years, it was basically on the premise that I would say it takes about 10 years to even hire an employee today. So 7 years with this test case of going self-certification, or you would say self-certification or third-party review. Let's give them an opportunity and a chance to show that they can do it. That was the whole intent. And Councilmember Wire, you'll probably be here through the 7 years expiration if this measure does come out. Thank you. Okay, Director, thank you very much. At this time, may we proceed on to remote testimony? Madam Clerk, do we have any remote testifiers?
Yes, Chair, we have testifiers.
Thank you very much. We have Mr. Rocky Mold of the Hawaii Solar Energy Association. Mr. Mold. Hi, Rocky.
Aloha, Chair Say, Vice Chair Dos Santos Tom, and committee members. I'm Rocky Mold with the Hawaii Solar Energy Association. We'll stand on our testimony in support of this measure and just note that TPR and self-certification is a really good answer for one part of our market. Really, the larger scale solar installations in commercial and multifamily markets. We are strong supporters of using online procedures for the lion's share of our smaller scale residential rooftop solar and storage projects. So I'm here to answer any questions. I would also say that, we agree that there should definitely be accountability if you do go to a self-certification or TPR process, absolutely. And the devil is in the details in implementation, and we look forward to working with all stakeholders, council, and the administration to put a viable program together. And I'm here for questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Mold from the Hawaii Solar Energy Association? If not, thank you very much, Mr. Mold. Let's move on to Gigi Zhang, the Community Advocacy Research Education Services. Okay, Mrs. Angela Young, please.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, and the committee. Angela Melody Young, testifying to provide comments. So I was going to read something from the news, but they can distort and twist information a lot of times, and sometimes it's just gossip. So I'll be reading from a platform called Architectural Record, an architecture and interior design platform about self-certifying in other jurisdictions. And it says this: just as other cities around the country are experimenting with ways to streamline the plan review and permit process, New York City, a trendsetter in this respect, is clamping down on its practice of allowing architects to self-certify building plans. In an effort to save architects time, Oregon is taking Portland's e-permit online submission tool statewide. Los Angeles has unveiled what is called the Guaranteed Express Permit Program, which aims to serve walk-in customers with small projects within 30 minutes and issue a permit within 90 minutes, or the application is free. And in Honolulu, DPP is implementing a system called third-party review. We are in support of clearing out the backlog. And so, we just wanted to provide comments. So thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much, Ms. Young, in support of the measure before the council. Okay. Madam Clerk, is there anyone else standing by remotely to testify?
Chair, there are none.
Thank you very much. Let's move on to in-person testimony. We will now proceed with the in-person testimony. Madam Clerk, do we have any in-person testifiers?
Yes, Chair, we do.
Okay, great. Okay, when I call your name, please come forward to the testifier podium and state your name for the record. At this time, we have Kauanui Sabas from HGEA.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Kauanui Sabas here with HGEA. We stand on our written testimony in opposition to this measure. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Sabas? Okay, please.
Hey, aloha.
Councilmember.
Can you elaborate?
Yes, of course. So, we do have concerns about the quality of third planning reviewers. We do believe that DPP should invest in its current and future workforce, public employees. As you folks know, DPP is currently facing vacancy rates, and we encourage DPP and the city to look at increasing the pay for some of these employees that are involved in the permitting process. And we believe that is a much more sustainable approach than contracting out to third-party reviewers. Thank you.
Another follow-up question, but for the short run, you have to concur that the backlog is unsustainable and everybody is hurting across the board, both residents and developers.
Correct.
And so you are opposed, even if it's for a short-term period, to get through the backlog?
So that is something that we would have to consider. But as of right now, we are considering, at least for the short term, but at least for the long-term solution, DPP should look into.
Oh, I think we all fully agree with that. I think what we are concerned about is what we're dealing with now, because it's impacting everybody. Anyway, thank you so much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, Councilmember Wire, followed by Tupola.
Thank you, Chair. Mahalo for being here. I was just curious if you had thoughts on the 7-year sunset, whether that should be, well, Chair gave his reasoning, so I'm sure you heard it, and then whether that should be shorter, whether that allays any of your concerns, or just if you had any thoughts on that.
Council member, thank you for your question. That's something that for the 7 years, we would again have to consider it. 7 years, in our opinion, is probably a little too long for at least for the city to look into making building planner reviewers positions more tractable. But that's something, at least in a time frame, that we are happy to consider. Thank you.
Let's see.
Mahalo.
Okay. Councilmember Tupola.
Thank you for being here. So I did have a meeting with President Randy Pereira, and my other resolution that I had put forward was in regards to relief workers. And I'd spoken to Randy about that because they had done it for unemployment. They had also done it for the Land Bureau of Conveyances when the backlog was huge, and it was really burning out, a lot of the workers. And he said he was in favor of that. And I feel like third-party reviews, self-certification, although we're doing many measures to try to expedite the bills, they are very similar because it's addressing workforce, right? And I think because we're addressing workforce, I personally feel like even if we were to get up a program that, again, I'm going to meet with the director offline, but I feel like is very similar to third-party reviewers. Like, how much really would that clear the backlog when we're really talking about manpower, right? We need more people to get hired. How long would it take us? And I know the director wants at least 80 more people to get hired. And the time frame of us to find them and get them hired, it may take a year, a couple years, but not 7, I hope not, for us to get to that 80. So I guess my question to you would be, in regards to this versus relief workers, do you think that HGEA prefers one solution over the other, or what is your thoughts?
Thank you for your question. As of right now, I do not have an answer for you. That's something that I'm going to have to talk offline.
Yeah, I did talk to our DHR director, and she's going to reach out to you guys. So I told them that's where it all starts. That conversation starts with you guys, and then if that's even a possibility for an interim so that we can get actual manpower in there to process all of this, because the pre-screen is one thing, but plan review, code review, those are bodies. Those are people that have the right, ability to process all of that. So thank you so much for being here, and we look forward to working with you guys on this because I think this is one of the key things that we need to get at right away. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion for Mr. Sabas? If not, thank you very much, and aloha. Moving on to Mr. Evan Oy.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Evan Oy on behalf of NIAP Hawaii. We stand in support of this measure, which seeks to help with the permitting process and alleviate the current backlog, which is hindering some developments of projects around the county. We feel that this would greatly expedite the development process and help de-risk for some developers. So, we stand in strong support and are available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Oy from NIA? If not, thank you very much. Is there anyone else in the council chamber who would like to testify?
Chair, there are none.
Okay. Thank you. So members, at this point, we are in discussion. And having this discussion earlier this morning and listening to the testifiers, I would like to recommend that we amend the bill to a posted CD1. It's going to continue on with the 7 years as far as sunset. And then postpone the committee action on the bill to provide more time for you as members to consider the bill. And I can say for the record that it will probably be that we'll have a hearing next month also on this one. So the chair recommends that Bill 6, 2023 be amended to the posted CD1. Any discussion, any objections or reservations? Hearing none, the bill has been amended to CD1. The chair then recommends that Bill 6 of 2023, CD1, be postponed to the next zoning committee meeting. So you folks are aware that the next zoning committee meeting will be addressing this measure. So is there any discussion? Any objections or reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Okay. Moving on to agenda item number 4, Bill 8. This bill delays the automatic repeal of Ordinance 19-8 relating to affordable rental housing, which has been codified by ROH Chapter 32. Currently scheduled to sunset on May 21st of 2024, and adds an additional date by which the Director of Planning and Permitting is required to provide a report to the City Council with recommendations on whether the affordable rental housing program established in Revised Ordinance of Honolulu Chapter 32 should be repealed, modified, or extended. Members, we have listed on the agenda addendum a proposed Committee Draft 1 version of the bill, OCS 2023-317/3-31/2023 at 4:39 p.m. For your information, a summary of the amendments is listed on the agenda addendum. Among other things, the CD1 listed on the addendum agenda revises the current sunset date of the ordinance of Chapter 32 to May 21st of 2024 instead of May 19th of 2023. At this time, we have the Director of Department of Planning and Permitting, Mr. Don Takeuchi Apuna.
Thank you, Chair. Our department or the administration supports this bill to allow more time for Bill 7 projects to come through and receive the grant money to help finance these projects. So we are supportive. I think currently we've approved 8 Bill 7 projects, and we have about 30 in our department right now under review. So there could be a great potential for affordable housing to be built in this apartment style that we support. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions for the Director? Yes, Councilmember Kiaino.
Thank you, Director. I know that previously there were significant delays in these Bill 7 projects, and since you have become the acting director and now current director, the timelines have improved. Can you share more about the timeline for review and approval of these projects?
So I think there was some, Bill 7 is not the easiest bill to work with. I think we are trying to work with the developers to understand the interpretation of the bill. So that was a struggle, and it continues to be to some extent, but we are trying to be collaborative. The timelines, it's hard to say. It just depends on the type of the project and some of the confusion or disagreement about some of the provisions. So, but I would say with 8, I think we've approved 8 in the last several months. So we kind of have hit a stride, but I couldn't give you an exact timeline for these projects. They're all kind of different too.
Okay. Auto approval. One of the testifiers has suggested auto approval of building permits if not issued within 90 or 120 days. Are there any instances within existing law that result in the automatic approval of building permits? And if yes, can you share more about those programs?
So within Bill 7, there is a 90-day automatic approval for these projects. Whether the developer wants to take advantage of that, that's up to them. But we believe that it still needs to go through our process in order for them to receive an approved plan with which the inspector can go out and approve and issue a certificate of occupancy. So I think that while that is available, I think people or the developers want to go through our process to ensure that their plans meet code and they can have an inspector go out and check and get their certificate of occupancy.
And what if they were to avail themselves of it without your approval? What happens then?
Then they might not be able to get their inspection and a certificate of occupancy.
Okay, got it. I have a project that's ongoing in my district, and because DPP has the sole discretion to approve this project, is that correct? There is no city council role here?
Right,
Okay.
yes, it's a building permit.
Okay, so do you have a one-pager or something on your website that explains the process? Because I am doing my best to help in the education of a project on Ku'ile Road that has been, that is going through the process. And while I have all of the specifications for the project, I know that my community, Kailua community, still is trying to better educate themselves on the Bill 7 process. Do you think you can, if you don't have, can provide me with a one-pager of the actual process for Bill 7?
Sure, we can come up with something.
Yeah, because they're just, I think everyone understands the 201H process, but they also, it's very complex, but at least I guess they feel that there's an opportunity for public input. During your process of Bill 7, is there any opportunity for public input during the vetting process for the Bill 7 permit?
It's basically a building permit, so it's like a ministerial permit, so there isn't really opportunity for community input like a discretionary permit. I would just
or a conditional use permit.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just trying to better understand and educate myself. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I would just offer that, yeah, it is a building permit, so we might give a write-up about what the provisions are under the Bill 7 that would allow this type of development, but we can see what we can write up a summary.
And the reason I'm saying this is because for those who are still acclimating themselves to Bill 7, I would hate for there to be opposition because the community was not fully informed on the process. Because I do believe that the developers are doing everything they possibly can to fit within the parameters of the project, which is legal. And I think they were unaware. So in Kailo, it'd be from 40 to 60 feet now, right? And so I'm just trying to inform. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Councilmember Wire, please.
Mahalo, Chair. Mahalo for being here again, Director. I'm just curious, again, a very important section of the law that supports affordable housing. I'm just curious your thoughts on the, so if I'm understanding correctly under the amended version, it would sunset in 2034. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think it's good. I think it's good that this program, we're trying to work out the kinks and we're kind of making some headway. So it does provide affordable housing units quickly when we get the process completely down. So the potential is there for the number of units, the amount of time. I think it's a good amount. I don't think there's a strict number that we're looking for or that we're against. So I think it's fine.
Okay. But then I'm hearing it sounds like you don't really have any preference on the timeline then.
No, just more time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Just given that we're still waiting on a report, that's correct, right? On just the effectiveness of the, or is there going to be additional reporting on the numbers and you're saying you're getting it all in order, right?
Yeah, we can provide that. We can definitely provide status on where we're at with the number in the queue and the number that have been approved.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just curious because I know when we initially implemented it was kind of a ordinance we're revisiting every 5 years. And so unless we're going to do it in perpetuity, I don't know if we want to consider looking at a shorter time frame. Maybe the 7 years, I know in the last bill we talked about was kind of a compromise, but just food for thought.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Any further? Okay, Councilmember Tyler DeSantis.
I'd actually like to pick up on the line of questions from Councilmember Wire. I note that in here there's a requirement for a report 2 years prior to the repeal date regarding the repeal, modification, or extension. And I think it would be valuable for us as a council, as policymakers, to have this report a little bit earlier. And maybe sometime in the mid 2020s, so that it's, the mayor's up for election 2024. Whoever is the mayor in 2024, 2028, that person, whether it's Mayor Blangiardi or somebody else, should have the opportunity to have input there. And so I think it would be valuable to have additional reports. And I hope this isn't burdensome to the department, but it would be helpful, especially if there are things that are identified as obstacles, whether that's a 90-day permit thing, or whether it's something else like the fire code or building code or something else that's identified along the way. Do you think that, would you be opposed to having an additional reporting requirement maybe sometime in the mid-2020s and every 2 years thereafter?
Yeah, that's fine. I think we would like to know what the specific interests, what you would like us to look at and include in that report.
And then is there like a working group that is working on Bill 7 policy and, possible future amendments?
Yes. So that's one of the 3 working groups that we have. It's the Affordable Housing Group, but that group is currently focused on Bill 7.
Can we get a list of the people that are members of this Bill 7 working group?
Sure.
Yeah,
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion for the director? If not, members, may we proceed on to remote testimony? Madam Clerk, do we have any remote testifiers?
Yes, Chair, we have a testifier.
Okay, we have Ms. Angela Young on Bill 8. Ms. Young?
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, and the committee. Angela Melody Young, testifying in strong support. So the purpose of this ordinance to address housing in Honolulu, and the new chapter enacted by Ordinance 19-8, Section 2 has been codified as Chapter 32, Revised Ordinances of Honolulu 2021, and was scheduled to sunset on Friday, May 19th, 2023. So as someone who's been active at the state, we've been at the Housing Committee in the Senate and the House, and the goal we always hear is to get more housing projects, expedite the process, streamline, and also they've been mentioning there's going to be an emergency proclamation, and the chief housing officer is working on it. In the Water and Land Senate Committee, the chief housing officer mentioned she was looking at the law HRS 6E to get to know the historic preservations chapter and how it applies to the emergency proclamation. They talked about the city. From a citizen's perspective, it seems like there's a lot of conversations about, what the agencies are doing, what the departments are doing, and outside of the legislative process, there isn't a lot of conversations where everyone involved sits at a table and talks through the concerns to share advice and to integrate everyone's work. So yeah, we just wanted to comment on that. So thank you for the opportunity to testify.
No, thank you very much, Ms. Young, again for your excellent testimony in regards to Bill 8. Madam Clerk, let's move on. We'll now proceed with in-person testimony. Do we have any in-person testimony?
Yes, Chair, we have a testifier.
Okay, we have Mr. Evan Oye, once more of NAIOP, Hawaii.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Evan Oye on behalf of NAIOP Hawaii. We stand in strong support of this measure, which seeks to extend the Bill 7 program. Bill 7 offers, a great option in order for developers to establish these affordable units, and we would love to see that program continue. So, support of this measure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Oye? No questions? Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone else in the council chamber who would like to testify?
Chair, there are none.
Okay, thank you very much. Members, we are now in discussion. Any discussion? Okay, the chair would like to recommend that Bill 8 of 2023 be amended to the CD1 listed on the agenda addendum as of OCS 2023-0317/3/31/2023 at 4:39 p.m. as further amended as we discussed to change the extended sunset date to 7 years. 7 years after the effective date of the ordinance, which is on May 21st, 2034. To change the deadline for the DPP director to submit a new report to 6 years after the effective date of the ordinance instead of May 21st of 2032, and to make technical and non-substantive amendments. Okay, any discussion on the proposed CD1? Any discussion? Okay, hold on. Can we have a short recess? We're now in session. Okay. I apologize to the members of the zoning committee. I would like to make a verbal amendment in incorporating Councilmember Tyler DeSantos Tam's request that the director, when you look at the amendment, is that the DPP director is to submit a new report to 5 years rather than 6 years. Okay? Cutting it back for a report. Years after the effective date of the ordinance, and to make technical and non-substantive amendments. So is there any discussion at this time? Any objections or reservations? Hearing none, the bill has been amended to a committee draft 1 with the oral amendment that I've made. The chair then recommends that Bill 8 of the 2023 CD1 be reported out with the oral amendment be reported out for passage on second reading, and once again, scheduling of a public hearing. Any discussion? Any objections or reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Thank you very much. Okay, moving to agenda item number 5, Bill 21, 2023. This bill amends the housing code to align building requirements of the city and county of Honolulu with the IBC in specific areas, including requirements relating to the provisions of light and ventilation. Members, we have posted to the agenda 2 proposed committee draft 1 versions of the bill. For your information, summaries of the amendments are listed on the agenda. We have also listed on the agenda addendum a 3rd committee draft 1, OCS 2023 0312/4/3/2023 at 7:49 a.m. that replaces one of the committee drafts 1 that was posted on the original agenda. The committee draft 1 that we will be considering today are the first committee draft 1 posted on the agenda, which was OCS Office of Council Services of 2023. slash 0289, excuse me, dash 0289 slash 3 slash 30 slash 2023 at 1:30 p.m., which would delete the light and ventilation provisions in the housing code and refer to the natural or artificial light and natural or mechanical ventilation standards in the building code. The committee draft 1 listed on the agenda item OCS 2023-031-2/4/3/2023, which was at 7:49 a.m., which would provide that the light and ventilation provisions in the housing code do not apply to multifamily dwellings, which will be subject to the natural or artificial light and natural or mechanical ventilation standards in the building code. For the edification of the members, there are 3 different codes that are involved. First, you have your building code, which generally applies to buildings and structures. Secondly, you have your housing code, which applies to buildings and structures that are used or intended to be used for human habitation. And third, you have your residential code, which applies to the 1-family and 2-family detached dwellings and townhouses not more than 2 stories high with separate means of egress. At this time, we have the Director, Ms. Dawn Takeuchi Apuna of the Department of Planning and Permitting to receive her testimony. Oh, Mr. Sumada.
Thank you, Chair. And members of the council. My name is Jiro Sumada. I'm the Deputy Director for the Department of Planning and Permitting. The department stands in support of Bill 21, the 3rd version of CD1, that allows some flexibility for multifamily dwellings to be like office buildings to be converted into residential housing. And I'm available for questions.
Okay. Can you restate the testimony once more for the council members who are here?
Oh, okay.
The CD committee draft.
Committee draft 1, version 3.
Version 3. You guys all have a copy of version 3.
Chair, so that's the 7:49 a.m. on 4/3?
Correct, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, the latest version of it, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So that's where we have.
So that one does not apply to the multifamily.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe that's where Mr. Sumada, if you could share with the members what is that particular draft of the measure.
So basically, this version of CD1 allows that for multifamily dwellings, light and ventilation requirements will defer to the building code. And that's where the flexibility provides for artificial light and mechanical ventilation for multifamily dwellings.
Okay. May we have a short recess? The committee, please come to order. After getting some clarification, the 7:49 a.m. Committee Draft 1 states for the record that the light and ventilation provisions in the housing code do not apply to multi-family dwellings. I'm trying to address the issue in regards to the building code, housing code, and residential code. And we are trying to determine that for the light and ventilation provisions in the housing code that we do not apply to multi-family dwellings, that means that we are preserving the ventilation and lighting of single-family homes and detached. That was the intent. So we are going to be supporting a measure, if you folks are all in agreement, that the light and ventilation provisions will only affect the multi-family dwellings. That's the condominiums and apartments, or whatever it may be. Councilmember Kiana, please.
No, I'm sorry, I'm confused. So it applies to multifamily dwellings, but not to the others?
Exemption from the ventilation and lighting code.
The exemption applies to?
Single-family dwellings, multi-family dwellings.
Oh.
So you can have.
Okay, but not to the others?
Not to the mom and pop type of, that's residential.
Okay.
But Jiro, would you like to, try to make it much
And
more
what's the reason for that?
Go right ahead.
Councilmember, the provision allows the flexibility to use artificial light and mechanical ventilation to convert, for example, to convert an office building to a residential tower. That's really the basis of this. It's not that a new condominium or a new tower, residential tower structure doesn't have to meet the desired natural light and ventilation that you would normally have for a residential unit. I think if someone was building a new building or a new condominium, they would provide that natural light and ventilation. That's the desired. But the goal of this bill is to allow the flexibility to convert an existing office building that usually has fixed glass windows, or maybe their operable windows are smaller than what's required by code, to convert that type of structure. And also they have some interior office spaces that they don't have access to natural ventilation, that they could use that type of building for residential purposes.
Okay.
So that's what this bill is for.
Okay, no worries. I did have a question. So with regard to, because I think we dealt with it in a project down in Chinatown. So does that preclude them the requirement that for a bedroom they have to have a window?
Yes. So in this regard, they do not have to have that natural light. But if there is an adjoining room, you could probably get by with that in this particular case.
Okay, but this is not, this is just for rehabilitating a building, or renovating building. This is not for new buildings, because I don't know if I want to be on record for not requiring new buildings to have natural light in the bedroom.
The way it's written, this would allow that flexibility.
Only for certain buildings, not new buildings, right? For new buildings?
Yes. Yes.
I don't know. Okay.
So what I would suspect that any new developer that wants to build a new building would prefer to have natural light and ventilation as required by the code as part of the selling points for that structure. Because that would be the desirable
I understand
preference.
that. I can understand that for a building that is converting from an office building to a new building, but not for a new building to not require that. So, Chair, I guess that's what I'm thinking. I'm sorry, they should provide that, especially for a lot of these conversions, they're going to be for kupuna.
Okay.
I want them to have a window.
Your point is well taken. Councilmember Wire, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to clarify because I think Councilmember raises some good points. But so with the unit itself, still have natural light? Or we're just talking about in the bedroom?
Well, it depends on, it's kind of like a hypothetical on all the different possibilities of how to convert an existing office building into an apartment. So,
because you may have the internal rooms.
Yes.
Okay.
That could be used as a bedroom. So there's different configurations that developers could use to have some flexibility. But I think there's some judgment that can be used in how to apply the provision, mainly because whoever the developer is, they need to, their goal is to actually convert it and then sell the units. So I would think that they would try to maximize the potential to meet all the requirements, and where they can't and get stuck, then they still provide a viable product that the community wants to purchase. And if folks want to have natural light and ventilation, this probably would not be an option that they would be willing to pursue.
Do you know what types of projects come before council? So like 201H projects would come before council?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Are there any other types of projects that you can think of?
Well, others that need a special use permit, does that, or
if they're coming, for example, for other types of incentives.
Right.
Or
right.
Yeah, so I guess my question is just that if we're talking about low-income housing, receiving benefits, typically that would be a project that this council
Recently, there
gets
was
to review.
one,
Is that correct? I see Director Apuna shaking her head, yes. But sorry, Deputy Director.
Recently, there was one that came in for a 201H at the 4th Street Mall.
Okay.
The Catholic Church building, I think.
So,
and that one had the provision for mechanical ventilation and artificial light.
Okay, broader, yeah, I guess I'm just getting broader at that. So I think as you're talking, I'm thinking that typically projects for more vulnerable folks in our community are going to be those low-income projects, right? But if someone's buying a market rate unit or whatnot, and they have the option to decide where they want to live,
right?
They're positioned differently. So, yes. Okay, appreciate that.
Councilmember
Thank you.
Sam, please.
So I just want to make a few things clear. The Director, under the IBC, well, let me preface this by saying currently under our housing code, there's a requirement for 10% of a room to be illuminated by, or for the window to be 10% of the floor area of the room. Under the IBC, what's the requirement? It's not substantially different, right?
I don't want to.
Okay.
I cannot give you an exact answer, so I.
The answer is it's 8%. So we're talking about, making minor differences here to the point about bedrooms and, whether there's no windows whatsoever. This does require artificial lighting, so people aren't just going to be sleeping in a rabbit den in the dark and suffocating through ventilation. And I think there's a concern that projects would be built without windows to save on cost. But Director, in your experience, the required HVAC system and operating an HVAC system, is this not much more expensive?
Well, see, I think we need to clarify what we're comparing. So if you're talking about a new structure that's a condominium part, they have HVAC systems that are expensive to operate. An office building also has a HVAC system that needs to be operated. But so I don't know if that answers your questions or not. But.
I guess the point that I'm trying to make is I recognize there's a concern that hypothetically an office conversion could be done, no windows, no nothing, and targeted at low-income folks. But under the International Building Code, there's still a requirement for HVAC and for artificial lighting, and it seems to me that that may be actually more expensive anyway. So this notion that we're going to be some future greedy developers going to be building windowless and airless rooms strikes me as sort of a non-issue, because the alternatives that they have to provide under the building code are fairly expensive. And so the only people who would be doing this are ones like office buildings that have existing HVAC systems that they're refurbishing, are already in existence, and don't require new installation. I guess that's the point I'm trying to get across here. That wasn't a question, sorry.
Okay. Okay. Councilmember Kiaina, please.
Chair, I don't have a problem with moving this bill forward, but when it comes back to committee, I would look to narrow its scope to buildings that convert and not to new buildings. I just want to let you know that. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Your point is well taken. Any further discussion? If not, Madam Clerk, are there any remote testifiers? Oh, we do have. Listen. Okay.
Oh, yes, Chair, there are.
Is Mr. Michael Silva?
Testifiers in person.
Oh, in person. Okay, Mr. Sterling Higa.
Testifier has not logged on.
Is Mr. Higa here? Oh, he's not on, right. I'm just checking if he's here. Okay, Madam Clerk, is there anyone else standing by remotely?
Chair, we have a telephone caller.
Okay, we have a caller, 808-911. Are you there? Caller.
Good morning.
Good morning. State your name and what measure you're talking about. Is it Bill 21?
This is for Bill 21, Councilmember Say, and the members of the committee. This is Christine Camp from Avalon Development. I wanted to request your consideration for approval of this bill. It's an important bill as we look at adaptive reuse, and in addition to infill projects adjacent or filling in between high rises. I believe that it allows for flexibility. Doesn't mean that the development will be all comprising of no windows. Projects will have windows where they need to be because there is a huge market demand for windows. But what it allows us to do is to allow for some flexibility in using up square footage within the building for living spaces by having indirect lighting, and which means you have windows that are looking out into a room that does have operable windows or have windows, and mechanical ventilation, which means that you'll have air conditioning, or you'll have a fresh air intake from the outside where they will be conduited into the bedroom, and a dedicated air outtake. So there are two separate ventilation mechanisms for those bedrooms or living spaces within the unit. As Councilmember Dos Santos Tam had indicated, developers will incur a lot of expenses when you're building brand new to allow for that. But what it does is it allows us to give larger spaces of living space rather than not being able to build it to maximize the space. And specifically to a point would be in brand new, when we recently came to you for the 4th Street Mall Senior Housing Project. One side of the wall had to be blank with no windows. It was a single loaded building with a hallway that separated the one side of the building with no windows, and the hallway that led into the bedroom, led into the living room that had windows on one side. Now, very long units, we could have made them all one bedroom, but because of the current building code, housing code, we could not call those rooms bedrooms, and we subsequently had to come to you for 201H approval to explain to you why it was appropriate for us to look at it using the standards of the IBC or the International Building Code. I believe that the flexibility is needed for both new as well as the adaptive reuse because it will allow for more living spaces and optionality as we build more into the urban core, where we may be side by side in a very small land area where we could build. In this case, for the 4th Street Mall senior housing, we were able to build 67 living units on 6,900 square feet next to an existing high-rise. So we'd like it because...
Summarize your testimony, please, in regards...
Yes, the summary is that the flexibility is needed for both existing as well as new projects, and we'd like you to consider the optionality by allowing this bill to proceed. It just gives us a tool in the bucket of tools to allow for more housing options in the urban core. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Members, any questions for the developer at this point in time? If not, okay. Madam Clerk, are there any more remote testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Thank you very much. Let's move on to in-person testifiers. Mr. Michael Osilva.
Aloha, Committee Chair Say, Council members, Vice Chair Dos Santos Tam. I'm a mechanical engineer in this Department of Planning and Permitting. I'm also the former building chief, building division chief, / chief of building safety for the Department of Planning and Permitting. However, I must make it clear that I'm submitting testimony as a private citizen licensed in the field of mechanical engineering and civil engineering. I am not submitting testimony on behalf of the department. I strongly oppose Bill 21 and the different committee draft versions under consideration with regard to the requirements of light and ventilation. I've submitted written testimony that presents all the reasons why I am against Bill 21. But since I gotta keep this testimony short, I'll try to highlight a few of the more major issues. Our unique situation in the middle of the Pacific with our unique climate gives us the privilege of using natural ventilation. All mechanical ventilation systems will fail. They all will at some time or another. It's just a matter of when. With our unique situations in the middle of the Pacific, the repairs can sometimes take days or even weeks. That means no outside air for the duration of the repair. This creates an unhealthy and potentially life-threatening situation for those who may have respiratory illnesses or respiratory concerns. I think my time up is for oral testimony. You can
Mr.
read the rest of the reasons.
You may proceed. Please continue.
Oh.
As an expert.
Proponents of this bill say that installing operable windows in adaptive reuse buildings is cost prohibitive. I understand that. But that line of reasoning is hard for me to accept. Companies involved in adaptive reuse get millions of dollars in exemptions from the city. Affordable housing projects can also receive grants and tax exemptions. So furthermore, affordable rentals can be leased or sold at market value rates at the end of the affordable rental periods, thus allowing the developers to make millions of dollars more. I think some of the taxpayer money that we're giving to them can be used to require windows that people can open. Again, you can read my other reasons written in my testimony. I understand the need for more housing, but this bill benefits the developers and builders at the sacrifice of the residents who occupy these buildings and at the cost of taxpayer money. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. Members, any questions for Mr. Osilva?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Mr. Silva, please. Councilmember.
Thank you. Thank you for taking time out of your day to come and testify because, we have to look at so many bills. It's important for us to hear this. So, in the recent project, just hypothetically, right? Not hypothetically, real life. Of course, if they didn't make the window, then they sell it as a studio. You don't have a problem with that, correct?
If they didn't make the window?
The window would be, of course, by the lanai area. But if they were to try to cordon off an area to call it a room, right, without no window, you have a problem with that, correct? Because you would say that all bedrooms should have a window. I guess I'm saying that for buildings that have to retrofit, they are able to sell the units as studios without selling it as bedroom. I guess I'm just saying, you probably heard my earlier comments. You clearly are saying that for retrofitting a building as well as new buildings, it should require a window. I was actually looking at allowing it for retrofitting and prohibiting it for new buildings. What are your thoughts?
My position is that all residential units should have operable windows that we can open up. Now, if it's a studio, we might be able to look at different variations of that. But in my opinion, as an engineer for the last almost 40 years, operable windows is the way to go.
Okay, thank you so much.
We can supplement that with mechanical ventilation, but I do believe operable windows is a better option.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for the members at this point in time? Mr. Silva, thank you very much for
Thank you
your
very much.
testimony. I have a couple questions.
Yes.
Earlier in some of the testimony, there was a reference made to the IBC.
Yes.
Explain to the council members and I what the IBC is all about.
The International Building Code is a general code that applies across the board to all commercial buildings. Multifamily buildings would also be considered commercial here in the city. They do not take into account the unique situations of the jurisdictions. And so every jurisdiction has an opportunity to provide amendments that pertain specifically to their situation. I know of no other jurisdiction that has our unique ability to do what we do because we're in the middle of the Pacific and our climate is so unique from everywhere else. Again, there may be others out there, but I'm not aware of them.
Okay. I think earlier I shared with the council members the three classes, right? From building, housing, residential. In this particular case, it is on. So the building code, encompasses mostly everything, right? Then we have our housing. For the discussion purpose of as far as a building that was a office building, would the infrastructure be able to accommodate what this particular measure is all about, like ventilation and natural light? Because I don't know. I just felt differently about it because I was concerned more about the human behavior of individuals. I personally feel if there is no window for sunlight, there's no trade winds, etc. It's just like four walls around my unit. And I don't know what the future lies for all of us here as far as looking at the future, if that's what we want. And that's where I'm torn. I can understand that this particular idea, which is being applied to a particular project, will not be affordable. Because I, for one, feel that it's going to be more as far as how do you address the infrastructure.
Yeah. Buildings that have, like adaptive reuse buildings that have air conditioning and ventilation systems already in place, those would have to operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Taking up energy use, which in my mind is contrary to the 2045 mandate for renewable energy. The upkeep of these systems will be passed, the cost to upkeep and repair these systems will be passed on to the residents. And those systems can cost significant amounts. And so I guess I might just be a little bit conservative in my approach to things. But I am concerned about the health and safety of the people. The current bill and the committee draft versions do not meet, in my opinion, the health, safety, and welfare of the public issues that were presented in the original housing code.
Okay, good point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts? Councilmember Wire, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and mahalo for being here. So I'm just making sure I understand. So the code right now requires ventilation in bedrooms, or the open windows in bedrooms?
Yes.
And are you, sounds like you're, or correct me if I'm wrong, are you saying that all residential units should have some type of ventilation?
Okay, the current code says that all residential units should have operable windows, windows that we can open up in the bedrooms.
Okay.
That's the current residential code.
Okay, so when you say residential unit, though, are you talking about the bedroom or the whole apartment? Like the project we just had by Century Square, where the windows are in the living room and then the bedroom's in the back. So they can still, say open the windows if there's like a natural disaster and the power goes out, but it's not in the bedroom. Is that okay, or you're saying that?
That's something that we can consider.
Yeah.
I would still be a little bit concerned about that.
Okay. Okay.
But those are things that we might be able to take a better look at. But to me, the housing code has protected the citizens of this city for, I believe, 45 years, or nearly 40 years since its inception in 1978. We've never been willing to change it until now. I think that should hold some value.
Okay. Mahalo. Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further discussion, members, at this point in time? Councilmember Tyler DeSantos Tam.
Thank you for joining and sharing your mana'o. With respect to the contention that we are a special place and should have jurisdictional specific language, are you aware of whether any of the other counties have such a provision above and beyond the International Building Code?
No, I'm not. I'm not sure what the other jurisdictions do.
And if we're talking about tropical locations, are you aware of whether or not a place like Miami or San Diego, which are warm tropical places, have such a requirement in addition to the International Building Code, which they've adopted across the board?
No, but when we go to the mainland, when it's winter there, they can have some huge temperature swings, and like in most of those other jurisdictions, they don't have the privilege of allowing operable windows 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In Florida, in the summertime, is horrible. I would not want my windows open in the summertime, and so, but here in Hawaii, even if it's summer, even on the bad days, natural ventilation does help. And so we are very unique because of our situation in the middle of the Pacific with the oceans and the trade winds, or even when there are no trade winds, our climate is very different than most other places.
Any further discussion? Nope. You have Councilmember Kiaino, please.
Well, are we going to move for action?
I'm not making a decision yet.
Okay, because in light, now that I'm thinking about it a little more, I will be voting no.
Okay. Councilman Wire?
I think I would be voting with reservations if it passed out today, just because I think we'd have some time still to talk about it. But I don't know if the chair, I know you're making your decision, so I don't know if you're wanting to defer it or vote on it today. But I think deferring it would give us opportunity to flesh out some of these concerns. But of course, I'll defer to Chair.
Okay, any further discussion before we move towards the vote? Oh, just one more testifier, Mr. Evan Oy. Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Evan Oy on behalf of NIAP Hawaii. We stand in strong support of this measure, which, as this will greatly incentivize adaptive reuse projects, which, require additional design flexibility. Primarily the bill is designed to incentivize the conversion of office space to residential, which will bring housing units online at a more efficient rate and add to our housing inventory. So we greatly appreciate this measure and its introducer, and are available for any questions. Thank you.
Mr. Owe, the chair has a couple of questions, and this is where it's more of a personal thought about someday when you become a father, would you be willing to live in a facility or a unit like that? I just feel that with this type of projects that are coming up, we're losing that human nature, the humanistic side. If it's going to be just four walls for my condominium apartment or my unit, I don't know. Maybe I'm too old for this job, meaning that I like my windows, I like my screen doors, etc. But the complexion of Hawaii and how it's changing, that's where I'm just trying to figure it out, like you and all the others, because you folks are the future. And you don't have to respond. It's just for a council member say his concern was, what is in store for the future for the next generation if I go home, not I go home, but my grandchild goes home to a unit that's 4 walls.
I think there are going to be residents who are interested in this type of housing unit. Particularly, I think the primary goal of this measure is to provide housing options to our residents, and if they are acceptable to a unit with different forms of ventilation and lighting, I think that we should be able to provide that to them.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Owe? If there is no further questions, thank you very much.
Chair, we still in the discussion.
Is there anyone else in the council chamber who would like to testify?
Chair, there are none.
Okay. Seeing that, at this point in time, members, we are in discussion. Yes, Council Member Tyler DeSantos Tam.
Well, Chair, as the introducer of the measure, I wanted to thank you for scheduling this. And as the council member that represents downtown, where we already have 1132 Bishop Street, which asked for a waiver and was granted a waiver from this. We have 1132 the Fort Street Mall Senior Affordable Housing Project, which we did earlier this year, where we discussed some of these issues. I'd like to ask my colleagues for their consideration for this. As we know, we keep repeating this, we have a 25,000 unit housing shortage on this island. And we keep asking ourselves every time we talk about this, why can't we do this? Why don't we have flexibility? Why don't we do what this jurisdiction's doing to create housing? And when we have a bill that allows for some degree of flexibility, I don't want to see us shoot it down simply because it's not perfect for every situation under the sun. No pun intended. The history of this particular provision of the housing code applying to all residences began in 1964 when Honolulu adopted what was then the International Housing Code. That International Housing Code has since been deprecated and has no longer been used in almost anywhere, and certainly not updated since about the turn of this century. Since then, the International Building Code and International Residential Code have caught up to provide artificial lighting, artificial ventilation. HVAC systems have come a long way. And so we have the ability to preserve public health and safety. We've done this already in 1132 Bishop Street and for the Fort Street Mall project. We have a project coming up on Bishop Street that's going to provide 400 units, but it's a conversion of an office building where the existing windows are this wide. And to retrofit 30 plus stories is certainly a huge cost that's going to be passed along to the eventual renters. We have a building like Walmart in downtown Honolulu where everyone, I get calls on this every single day. What are we going to do with this building? Well, that building does not have windows and we want to convert it. Some people have said, why don't we convert it to housing? Well, it doesn't have windows. It's a big monolithic block. So in order to convert it to housing that the people can rent and live in, we're going to have to drill through. I mean, in order to do these conversions, we need bills like this to provide this flexibility, and I appreciate DPP's willingness to do so. Looking forward, the Housing Code, which again we adopted in 1964, has provisions that are not in alignment with the International Building Code or International Residential Code. It's cobbled together bits and pieces of a code that we haven't even adopted fully here, which is the International Mechanical Code. There are a number of provisions in here that don't align. And if we are going to provide housing and provide certainty to developers trying to do this, we need these things to be in alignment. So this is one step to get there. But later this summer, I'm hoping to introduce further legislation that would align these codes so we are following international standards and not imposing additional requirements that go above and beyond, that are duplicative and are burdensome, especially in light of our 25,000 unit housing shortage. So I would strongly ask my fellow council members for their consideration to move this bill forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other discussion for the members? If not, the chair at this time would like to recommend that Bill 21, 2023 CDB be postponed to a date and time to be determined by the committee chair. Okay. Any discussion? Any objections or reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Thank you. Moving on to agenda number 6. Council Communication 93-2023. The committee will take action on a draft committee report making recommendations to the council that the Building Board of Appeals be retained in its current form. Do we have from the administration, Christopher Hong? Ms. Don Takeuchi Apuna, Director.
Thank you, Chair. I think we're in support of the draft and have no other comments.
Okay. Thank you. Madam Clerk, are there any further testifiers remotely to testify?
Chair, there are none.
Are there any in-person testimony?
Chair, there are none.
Okay, thank you very much. Members, we are now in discussion in the draft committee report making the recommendations to the council that the Building Board of Appeals be retained in its current form. Any discussion? If there is no discussion, the chair recommends that the committee report be reported out for scheduling of a public hearing and adoption. Any discussion, objections, or reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Thank you. At this point in time, we have one more to go through, which is agenda number 7. Update by the Department of Planning and Permitting regarding the status of all pending land use ordinance amendments. Here we have the administration, Don Takeuchi Apuna, Director.
Thank you, Chair. I think that the members have received a copy of the report, and I'm here for any questions. Thank you.
Okay, any questions for the Director? If not, Madam Clerk, are there any remote testimony at this point in time?
Chair, there are none.
Thank you. Is there any in-person testimony at this time?
Chair, there are none.
Okay, seeing none, let's move on to discussion. Any discussion on agenda number 7, update of the land use ordinance amendments? Since there is no further business, the meeting is adjourned.